Hey, beautiful humans. Welcome back to the Circle of Life podcast. We are officially entering season 2, and this is really exciting because I feel like it is a whole new season for me personally. And I have been in the throes of so much over the last 6 months. I can't believe we are literally it's the 1st of July. I can't believe we are in July of 2025. Yeah, and it really is such an honor to be here. I have been moving through so much, and it has taken me what seems like months to get to a place where I felt really ready to share this in this depth, in this detail, like in this much with this much energy and excitement, more about my own story. And Ram Dass said that you can do it like it's a great weight on you, or you can do it like it's part of the dance. And for right now, I am just feeling like it is part of the dance, and I am just here to bring the dance, to just dance the dance. And before I get into it, before I start sharing with you about, my story, the roots that I have cultivated over the past 10 plus years of walking this path, I would really just love to say thank you so much to those of you who are tuning in, who are back here with me, and who have been walking this path with me, especially for all of these years, because I know there is actually so many of you, which is really, really fucking beautiful. And it just means so much to me because you know what it's like as a woman, a devotional woman, someone who is, choosing that experience of living deep, right? And not that depth is better than anything else. It's just you're a deep thinker, you're a deep feeler, you want to participate deeply in life. You want to, you want to be in the experience of life in everything that it has to offer across the full spectrum of things that it can offer. And you know what it takes to do that. You know what's required of you. You know that there are things that are going to shed, and you know that who you are and the way you communicate and the things you believe and the values that you hold and your personal principles, you know that they're going to evolve and change and shift with you. And sometimes as a result of that new growth and that evolution, which is so powerful and it takes so much courage, as a result of that, sometimes what happens is people leave, you know, and and that's, I believe, a natural part of the experience as well. But it's just such an honor to be here with you. If you have been with me, all these years, if you've been with me even pre the holistic PT, which we'll talk about if you're new here and you have no idea what that is, right? Like, look at where we are. And I just want to celebrate us. I want to celebrate us for arriving here in this moment. I want to celebrate you. I want to celebrate me. I want to celebrate this space and just give you all of my heart and say thank you so much. So, welcome to season 2. Season 1 was really beautiful, a different time, a different energy, a different experience, but a powerful one nonetheless. And this season, I just want to invite you to walk with me on this path of depth, of devotion, of life. And I want to do this with you. I want to do this together. I would really love to create, even more of a felt sense of community through this podcast, through this platform, especially for these times. Like, it doesn't take much to, you don't have to look too far right now to see that there is just so much moving. The pace of life is one I don't believe we humans may ever adapt to. And if we do, it's going to take a little bit of time. And there's a lot of change, there's a lot of shifts, there's a lot moving through the collective, there's a lot moving through each of us, there's a lot of, pain that's being projected into the collective. There's just a lot out there. And one of the number one things, apart from story, which I'll get into, that has been so medicinal for me as a woman, as a human being, is to be part of something. It's just to feel like I am not walking that path all by myself. Like, it literally makes me feel so emotional, like just the concept of being connected and in community, especially at times like this. And so season 2 is really a reflection of the times. It's a reflection of the past 10 plus years of me walking this path for myself and my communities and my clients and my service. right? So it's all encompassing, just like, life itself, just like me. And if you're looking for a community, if you're looking for a way to walk your own path in connection, in community, I would just love to invite you to stick around, because that's where we're going together. And I have a lot of really beautiful episodes that I have very loosely drafted, just, to really kick this season off with some oomph, like a punch, like a really powerful punch. So stick around and really walk this path with me if that feels aligned for you, because we're going some beautiful places. And so today's episode, like, I can't believe it's taken me so long to get to this place, but like, this episode is my story. And I have, and you're going to hear about this as we go today, but one of my primary themes or patterns, or just experiences that I feel like I've had to work really, really intentionally, with a lot of courage and a lot of support to move through, is actually like not just getting out of my own way, but moving through a lot of the shame around having experiences that wouldn't be deemed perfect. And you'll hear as we go that perfectionism is just one of those really tedious experiences that I have experienced my whole life, right? And I just think there's so much permission in this episode around how to be a woman who is showing up messily and imperfect, and who carries some of these threads, and sort of how it looks to do that, despite having, a nervous system that is very much geared towards everything needing to be perfect in order to feel safe, in order to feel like connected, and like you're going to have support and love and belonging within the community. So there's a lot in this, and it's going to be really beautiful. But first, what I want to start with is just the medicine of story, the medicine of stories. Everyone who has been around here a while will know that for me, story is the medicine, and one of the most powerful things, most powerful forms of medicine for me over the years has actually been receiving and hearing and experiencing just really powerful human stories from my teachers, from the people that inspire me, and just really listening to their hearts and the depths that they are willing to share from. That has been so, like, that has given me more perspective, more opportunities to really see myself. Like, just, it's given me so much more than pretty much any other tool, any other modality, any other resource that is, in my field. So this is going to be hopefully a really powerful episode for you, because I'm going to be sharing not just where it all started for me, but some of the most, profound initiations and transitions that I've walked through as a woman, as a multi-passionate woman, as a woman of service, as a woman with a really, really, really sensitive soul, right? And within that, just expressing to you some of the adversity, some of the challenges, some of the shadow aspects that like really were so heavy and tedious to walk through, and some of the fires, and also the medicine and the gold, right? And the rebirth, and just where your life can end up when you choose to go through, when you choose to go through, So let this, if nothing else, just be, a really powerful reminder of what's possible when you choose to listen to the deepest truths within you, right? The deepest knowings within you, because I can't speak for you, but my personal experience is that when you do that, so much just opens up for you. And even the mess, even the fire, it's all part of it. It's all part of the perfection. And there's so much medicine and wisdom that I personally draw from these experiences. So as I take you through, these pieces of my experience, I'm gonna sort of go start, middle, end, just to make it sort of, I don't know, easy to follow along. Like, there's so much that I draw from through my experience, right? So I want to start with some of the primary pieces. So there are probably 4 primary pieces that kept coming up as I was reflecting on my story. And, you know, essentially what I was asking myself was, how does my story want to come through? How has it been for me to cultivate these deep roots? And how does that want to be shared? How does that want to be offered into the collective, into this space for the highest good of all, you know? And as I was reflecting, there were 4 sort of primary pieces that kept coming up. One of those pieces was, you know, just navigating this world as a woman. And I know many of you can relate, being a cyclical, intuitive, deep feeler, deep thinker, like just a deep woman, right? That doesn't operate on a 24-hour cycle, right? That, you know, isn't actually supposed to do everything the way that, you know, it's sort of been modeled to us to do it, right? Especially in business, okay? Especially as a woman who is, you know, deeply in touch with feeling, with sensation, with energy and the unseen realms, like the forgotten magic, right? So that's one piece that just kept coming through for me, was like navigating that. Another piece was being a multi-passionate woman. So, you know, it's my experience that we live in a world that's very much like pick one, just choose one, be one kind of woman, pick one kind of career, pick one, choose one, right? A world that sees that kind of choice, and um, like a world that sees being multi-passionate as disorganized or irrational or limiting somehow. And it's absolutely not, you know. So here's a really fun fact about me, if you don't know this already, is that I'm a 4/6 manifesting generator in human design, for anyone that's into human design. Now, manifesting generators, they're here to do things a completely unique way, right? And so for me, my experience in this theme has been ever present my whole life. And that is like just feeling like everyone wants you to do it their way, when in truth, there is only my way, there's only your way, right? And so really breaking out of these ideologies and these conditioned ways of being in the world and doing things the way that they've always been done. And we're sort of the, you know, manifesting generators, we're sort of the visionaries. Like we have vision, we have sight, we're very efficient, right? And we often show the world what's possible, right? Through making choices that seem, you know, super radical and extreme to others, but are just so normal and organic and not really that big a deal to us, right? So if you're a manifesting generator, if you're a multi-passionate woman, you know, welcome. Welcome. I hope there's a lot of permission here for you, because the way that we are meant to be in the world is, you know, we all are meant to do what is right and unique for us. But for us in particular, we often have like this way of doing it that's just really different, because we want to pivot and we follow such a distinct and precise feeling in our bodies. And sometimes that can look like chaos. Sometimes that can look messy to the conditioned or trained eye that sees, you know, someone that sort of like has all these different passions, all these different ideas, and is moving, you know, all these different ways and directions, can sort of look at that as disorganized and unprofessional and imperfect, which, you know, as a recovering perfectionist, that's, you feel the weight of the eyes on you. So yeah, it's this is a theme that came up for me a lot. And another theme, and just something really fun to know about me as well, is like I'm the kind of woman who, like, when I reflected on my journey and started walking myself back through all these different experiences in my life, this was the number one thing that I was like, whoa. And I was like honestly so excited about this and so proud of this, and something that I actually genuinely love about myself and has contributed so much to being the woman that I am today. And that is that I am the kind of woman who never, ever, ever has needed proof that something is right for me, or that something is wrong out there, or that something being done one way shouldn't be done that way. Like, I've never needed proof. I'm not that person that will ask for it. I'm not that person that requires it. I just know in my being, I know in my body if something is possible or not, right? I know when something is right for me or not, right? I just know. And I can't tell you how many times I've said that in my life, and people just really, really struggle with it, right? I sense and know, things well and truly before they even become things. And I just know, I just get it, right? And there's one quote that sums this up so powerfully, and I'll never forget it. And if you know who wrote this, please send them my way. I need to speak to this person ASAP. But this quote, I don't know who wrote it. I just saw it once and it didn't have an author. And it said, crazy is being right too soon. And if I had to put my experience into one quote, that would be it. Right? It sums up so much of my experience. Right? I wonder if you can relate. And then the final piece is just these really deep holding patterns in my body. So you're going to come to learn a little bit more about the somatic and very bodily, physical, emotional, energetic experiences that are sort of alive in me on deep levels. And one of those is like these really deep holding patterns. And so for a lot of my life, how I would create safety in my body was to actually move out of it, right? Was to move out of my body and up into my head. But there was still so much happening on the very physical level of my body that I wasn't conscious of. And as I've become more conscious of that, as I've worked through, so many layers over the years, what I found to be, alive in me is that these deep holding patterns, these deep bracing patterns in my belly, in my hips, in my chest, right? And it's these patterns of really enduring life, like really like bracing and in like just enduring everything that's coming at me because I just genuinely don't have the tools or the buffer required to do anything with the energy that's there, right? So this is like gripping, like it's gripping. It's I want you to feel in your body like that feeling of when you tense your muscles and you squeeze your abs, right? It's like it's that gripping, it's that holding, it's bracing and gripping for dear life, right? And with that, this pattern of really struggling to let go, as you can imagine, right? With rigidity is that tension, is that control, is that really like that struggle to let go, right? Not wanting to let go or leave things behind or not let things die, right? And like really long periods of contraction before allowing, massive expansion, right? Overthinking, over processing, lots of little, pieces of interference from my mind when it comes to embracing the new, right? Like really struggling to let go with ease, instead sort of like fighting against it, bracing against it, like really struggling with change. And it's way less now than before, but that's in me. That's a pattern that I experienced from such a young age, right? And so, you know, this is a big part of why I'm so passionate about why I do what I do, because to get into these deeper layers is where we can start to immobilize and really discharge a lot of that tension and that gripping and that bracing and rewire the body and the nervous system and the brain to, you know, express itself in new ways and create safety, not through gripping, not through tensing, not through holding on, but, through other means, right? And this was just a really big piece that just kept coming up. So if you resonate with one or two or all of these patterns, just know that, this is a part of my story, and, we probably have a lot in common. So let's start at the beginning. So not the beginning of my life, but just the beginning of my journey, right? So this was over 12 years ago now, and let's just call this the initiation. Let's just call this initiation for initiation's sake. And this was at least a couple of years long, and this was really just the start of my journey into growth, into expansion, into breakthrough, into really starting to break down some of the more mental limitations of my experience. And this was a time in my life where I was working full-time in an accounting job. I was in a relationship with a man that I was really struggling with, and there was just a lot in my body, a lot going on for me at this time. And I want to give you a feel for what it was like living in my body, and what my nervous system and my energy was like. I want to give you a feel for what I was, the quality of the thoughts and thinking of my process, and what support I had to sort of get me through this, what tools I learnt on, also the adversity and challenges and hardships of this time, and also the gold, right? The medicine. And so at this time in my life, so I think 12 plus years ago, I would have, I don't even remember, I don't know, I'm 36 right now. So 12 plus years ago, roughly, in my body, my somatic experience of that time was just rigidity, tension, anxiousness, right? And energetically, a lot of merging, like merging with other people's energy, merging with other people's experiences, and manipulating and controlling those experiences in order to keep safe, in order to feel safe, to grip onto something that felt secure to me. Okay. And in addition to this, I was experiencing, a lot of lower back pain. I had repetitive tonsillitis. There were other physical manifestations and expressions coming through my body. And this was the time in my life where I was sort of reaching a point. I was partying. I was going out every weekend. I was drinking with my friends. I was like, I was sort of at the absolute peak of that. And now I'm starting to sort of descend down into this place where I'm wanting to feel a little bit more secure. I'm reclaiming some power, and how I went about that and where my journey like truly began is through reclaiming my health, reclaiming my body, my physical health, my physical strength, right? And so this just like opened up a whole new journey for me. And anyone that has ever made the decision to reclaim their health and their vitality on the deepest levels, I'm not talking about like just going to the gym for a week. I'm talking about devotion. I'm talking about really getting to the crux of like these health issues, and really coming back into right relationship with my body. So ditching the calorie counting, ditching the scales, ditching everything that I had ever been taught or told about health and about fitness, right? And at this time, like I wasn't a personal trainer yet. I wasn't running a women's gym yet. Like I wasn't even doing any of that, right? That came later. But this time in my life was truly about stability. Like I wanted to feel stable. And there were nights where I was sort of going out partying with my friends, and as like an anxious human, as many of you know, that's a big part of my history, big part of my story, something that I've healed, right? Like in many, many ways, in many layers. But that feeling of sort of going out, and what it was like getting ready with my friends, and getting all dressed up and having drinks and doing all that stuff. There was an aspect of that was so beautiful, right? There was an aspect of that was so fun. But there was also this other aspect of it that felt very, very outward. And that's the only way I can explain it. It's like I wasn't doing it for me anymore. It wasn't about me. This was about, getting dressed up and finding the right outfit and putting on enough makeup and getting the hair perfect. And it was actually about others. It was actually about like, how good can I look? How sexy can I look? Like I want to go out and I want to like, attract attention. And again, there is a really beautiful aspect in that, because there is like a beautiful feminine quality here. It's like that beautiful, that experience of like feeling yourself and just like feeling sexy and feeling alive and having that fun. But then there was this other aspect that actually was just so life stealing. Like it was really stealing my vitality. And so my experience was more like going out and just by the end of the night, I was feeling unstable and insecure in myself and anxious. And I didn't want to feel like that anymore. And you know what that's like when you arrive in a place when you're done. Like you're just done. You don't want to feel like that anymore. And you realize that that's actually up to you. That comes down to your choices, the choices you're making, the things that you're choosing. And so some of the challenges that I experienced around this was, my values started shifting as a young human, as a young woman. right? My values and just my core principles started shifting away from, sort of going out and drinking and doing all these things. Like, it started to shift and gear itself more towards health and feeling good and empowered and confident and strong and healthy in my body. And that created a lot of rapture, a lot of friction. And so, you know, navigating that was a really big challenge, right? And that really looked like choosing myself even when the people I depended on for connection, for love, for support were in disagreement and asking me to stop. Literally, like, why are you doing this? Why are you going to the gym? Why are you working out? Why is health all of a sudden so important to you? Right? When everyone's making jokes or making fun, right? Choosing myself and just keep going, right? With very, very little support. And what I want to speak into just quickly here is there was a part of me that just knew, that this was right for me. Like, this is something I wholeheartedly had to do for myself. It was not negotiable under any circumstances. Like, you could not have persuaded me which way or the other. Like, I was doing this no matter what. And I lean on challenges like this. I lean on these moments where, in so many ways, I could have very easily just stopped. Right? And even at this very young age, as a woman who was feeling so unsure within herself and so unstable in her energy and experiencing so many different energies and just activations within her body, to know, like, there's something deep within me that was still driving something really powerful. And I just kept choosing that. I kept choosing that no matter what. Right? And so this was such a powerful time in my life, right? And so I didn't have a lot of support, right? I had a deep inner knowing. I had an intuition. I had, the universe, I had spirit in some way holding me and supporting me through this. And this is something I leverage now, right? And something I trust, something I know, because choosing that for myself, choosing that path of reclaiming my health, and I did it like in every way. Anyone who knows me knows what health means to me, right? It is everything. It is my number one core value in life, right? And so I kept choosing that. And what that led me to, like, the medicine and the gold in this, was that it led me to finding my first passion, which was personal training and group fitness, right? And another challenge that I had as I found that was that I actually went to the people who were inspiring me, who inspired this, because at the time I was doing a strong boot camp, and it was really intense and really gnarly. And the trainers were honestly, like, they were really good to look at, but I really struggled with how they were doing it. Like, that it was just like, it was like the army. It was like proper hardcore boot camp. And I went to them and I was like, I'm so inspired by what you do. I love how I'm feeling. I love the results I'm getting. I just love this. Like, how can I become you? Like, how can I do what you're doing? And I received absolutely no encouragement whatsoever, right? Nothing. Right? I didn't get a single, oh, like, that's amazing. I would love to support you, or go here, or try this, or start here. None of it, right? Even back then, I didn't know what I was getting into when I got into the fitness industry. I was super naive. I had like blinders on, and I'm so glad that I did, because what I created out of it was fucking amazing, right? But no encouragement. And so once again, I'm like choosing this path for myself with very little support, very little community around me, leadership around me. Just honestly, what I'm seeing is everything I don't like about it and everything I'm going to change about it. And that's actually what drove me. Like, so it was like fuel to my fire, right? And so the gold and the medicine in this is obviously finding my first passion, learning how to trust that deep inner knowing within me. Again, not always perfectly, not always like right away, but just knowing and choosing that for myself. And then building the most unbelievable relationship with my body and her signals and her cues. And I learned the language of her through this chapter of my life. I learned her cues. I learned her hunger. I learned her thirst. I learned every little thing about her, to the point where now, like, I know as soon as something is off in my body, as soon as something changes, as soon as the energy shifts in me, as soon as my body, like, I can feel it straight away. I know, right? And this is something I'm so passionate about. This is something I am teaching women every single day, is to trust what you feel, trust your body, to come into relationship with your body, learn the language of her, because nobody, even if they tell you they can, nobody can know your body the way you can. No one can know better than you. I wholeheartedly believe that. Okay. So that was the big part of the gold in the medicine, and that relationship has just been building and building and building and building ever since, on deeper, deeper, deeper levels. And it's a relationship that I am unwilling to waver on, right? I'm unwilling to waver on that. And then another part of the medicine and the gold in this is that, I learned my first passion. I figured that out for myself. And this is such a powerful part of the path. And I know many of you will resonate with it. It's like, you move through something in your life, you reclaim your health, you reclaim your confidence, you reclaim something in you that was severed or disconnected or just untethered for a little time, and you reclaim it back, and then you walk the path of that reclamation. And every single step there's like a challenge, or there's something that you're overcoming, there's a choice that you're making, and that path that you're choosing to walk with great intention and great participation, right? You learn so much in these experiences that you can't help but want to share that with the world. You can't help but, like, become so passionate about helping other people do that, who want that, right? And so I qualified as a personal trainer, and I started my own boot camp, my own women's boot camp in the park. And I just started out with one client, and that was a big part of the gold and the medicine, and just doing that really beautiful groundwork, like they call, they say, like, chop wood, carry water, like just starting right where you are with just what you have, which is, for me, was just a passion. And, I was the embodiment, living, breathing, walking, talking of like a fit and healthy woman, right? But I just started out with one client in the park, right? And then she invited a friend, and they invited friends, and it just became like this beautiful, massive thing, which leads me to the middle, right? The middle of my story. So this would have been about, I don't know, 10 years ago. So that initiation really was a good couple of years. But this middle part, as is most transition, and this is exactly what I would call it, is like a transition period. This was a really, really, really big chunk of my life, a really big chunk of my experience. And this is where I actually do pull a lot of my wisdom from. And this would have been like, I reckon, at least 5 years long, right? Like, just, and there would have been, multiple initiations and integrations within that, of course. But this was a full-on transition. Like, this was a really lengthy transition from being, this woman who is, quite anxious and holding a lot of tension in her body, and is kind of geared more towards, insecure attachment, and who is, this multi-passionate woman still figuring herself out and how to, like, own that and claim, like, all these different things. Like, this is such a big transition for me, right? So in this time, I'm literally transitioning out of accounting, out of my relationship that I was in at the time, right? And I'm transitioning into like mentorship and becoming a teacher, right? I'm transitioning into having my own mentor and my own teacher, right? I'm transitioning into, or out of, like, this very, very specific season of my life where there's lots of shedding, lots of death, lots of decay. And, I'm transitioning into this deeper place, right? Where there's this pull to really fully claim, what was alive in me, and where that was taking me, where that was leading me. Okay. And so where this really began for me was, it was one particular day. And this day, honestly, I know people say this and it's not just to hype you up, but like like this day literally changed my life. And it was the day that I picked up like a $20 book that is called Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. And it's all small stuff. And I believe it's written by Richard Carlson. If I could have a conversation with this man, I think that would be really lovely as well. But this is the day that my thinking radically shifted. Right. So this transition, this middle chunk of my journey is very cognitive. Like this is the cognitive side of it. Like this is the very personal growth. This is the mindset growth. This is where a lot of breakthroughs are happening. This is where I'm starting to expand my perspective. This is where I'm starting to do like belief collapse work and deep state repatterning and like really going deep on the level of the brain, level of mind, like just rewiring the circuitry of how my brain sort of like fits together and looking at all those, conditioned ways and conditioned behaviors and conditioned beliefs. And it's very much from the neck up. There was, still a lot happening on the somatic level, but this is very much from the neck up. And I do believe that in many ways for many humans starting out, this is usually where it begins. It's with talk therapy, it's with talking it, because that's usually what's most accessible to us. It's usually what feels the most safe for us before we descend into the body, into the heart, into the womb. And that's true for me in my journey. And so for me at this stage, I'm waking up and I'm sort of transitioning into this woman who is choosing growth, who is choosing development, who is choosing evolution, who is choosing to rise and to really come into her own power, into her own body, into her own energy, into her own thinking, into her own thoughts, into her own way of being in the world, right? And that day that I picked up that book, I was actually moving through a really hard time. I was moving through like a very, I want to say the relationship that I was in was it was just a really hard relationship for me to be in. But I was gripping onto it for dear life, even though there was a part of me that knew so deep down that it just wasn't right for me, right? In many ways, it was triggering so much in me. Like my survival response was just being activated over and over and over again. And like I was ready to really leave this behind, but I was gripping for dear life. And this book just happened to be on the couch, and I picked it up, and I think it was my sister's book, to be honest with you. And I picked it up, and I just couldn't believe what I was reading. It was literally like opening a book, and all of a sudden I'm in this whole new world, and it's like magical, because it just was so just, it was like, when you're really ready for something, you're really ready to hear something, you're really ready to see something. That's what it was like. I didn't put it down. Like I read that whole book in that moment on the couch. And at this time, what it was like living in my body was really similar to what I spoke about before, only it had sort of manifested into a little bit more composure and a little bit more rigidity and a little bit more armoring up, right? Because in that very early stage, and even in this transitionary part of my journey, this big chunk, there was a lot of outside influence trying to sort of keep me from the path that I was choosing, right? So this is such a big initiation, a big transition for the growth path, for the healing path. It's you make these powerful choices for yourself and you start to change. You start to evolve, you start to expand, you start to open, you start to come into deeper alignment with yourself, and that can be really triggering for the people in your life. That can be really triggering to the external world, right? And so at this phase of my life, there's more armor around me to protect myself from those outside influences, from influencing me away from this path that I knew with every fiber of my being that I was supposed to be on, that I was supposed to be choosing for myself. Right. But there was still also a lot of fear. There was also a lot of activation in my body. And the composure was really about just holding it. Right. So these enduring patterns, these holding patterns were really, really alive in me at this time. And my thinking, right, was moving from it's just this or that to duality. I was starting to like transition into dual awareness, being able to hold like more than one perspective at a time. And that was really frustrating. That was really challenging because at that time, a lot of people in my life didn't see the world the same way. They didn't have that capacity. They weren't even interested, right? It was just very black and white. And so that was a huge challenge to navigate, right? But that my thinking, that was the quality of my thinking. It was now starting to shift, and there was more space in my mind to see things, to have greater perspective, right? Which is so powerful. And so this is, as I said, the start of my growth and personal development journey. And this is where I'm doing a lot of that cognitive deep state repatterning, lots of breakthroughs, and just starting to really connect dots. But primarily, this is where I am starting to take radical responsibility for my life, right? My radical responsibility for my thinking and for the way that my choices and my thinking are creating my experience, right? Radical responsibility for my life. I probably took it way too far. I remember my teacher at the time saying, Ellen, this is such a gift of yours, but it's also like a kryptonite. Like I think you take way too much responsibility sometimes because I was such an active participant in my life, right? So the challenges of this time, as I mentioned before, there was a lot of composure and not letting people in. I was really armored up as a way to protect myself as I grew, right? Because I knew that if I let that armor down, if I let people in at that time in my life, that I could very easily be influenced away from that, and I just wasn't having it. Right. So this time in my life, I haven't done, too much of that really deep healing work, right? I haven't touched any of those core wounds as yet. And so this is just how I had to do it, right? This is just how I had to do it at this time. At the time, even my teachers and mentors at that time weren't facilitating that kind of depth and that kind of wound work for me yet, and hadn't even entered my field. So this was just my way of, I protecting myself, which meant that I was disconnecting from family. I was disconnecting from friends and dynamics and relationships out of necessity because I couldn't hold myself in the woman I was becoming and simultaneously hold their projections, right? I couldn't simultaneously hold their conflicting values, right? I couldn't hold the conflict. I couldn't hold the tension of that. I couldn't hold the I just couldn't hold the fracture, right? And the rupture of that. Okay, so that was a really big challenge to navigate, and one that I did navigate, right? Another challenge at this time was, again, like just opting out of the drama and the drinking and the gossip and the ways of connecting and conversing and being in relationship with others. Again, I couldn't hold how they were, what they were offering to my experience. I couldn't hold the friction. I couldn't hold the tension of sort of where I'm wanting to move from and where they're coming from. I couldn't hold both yet, right? So it was more important for me to be able to hold me, right? And so I chose that, and as a result, relationships fizzled out, friendships fizzled out, right? Dynamics that were alive and at play in my life really fizzled out, and I started orienting myself towards, peace, a little bit more peace, a little less drama, a little less conflict, a little less drinking and gossiping, and a little more peace, a little more stability and balance, and just feeling grounded in my body, in my life. And that was my goal. That was literally the bullseye for me. That's all I was interested in. And then another challenge with this time is, again, that new growth coming in and really allowing that growth to take hold. Like that was a challenge because, as I mentioned before, these holding patterns, like so much fear around, okay, what's going to happen if I really become this person, right? And it was happening whether I wanted it to or not, right? It was already taking hold. It was already like these changes, these choices, like they were so important to me, to the point where, the relationship that I was in at the time that was fading, like this person I was with was desperate. They're like, just come out and just have a drink and just party and just have some fun, like just let loose. And I wanted to hold on to that. that part of my life. But this other part was stronger. It was just stronger. And it was so painful, like so painful. I remember just weeping on the floor and just feeling so lonely, and like at that time not knowing, but like all these abandonment wounds and stuff coming through, like just that was painful to let people have these perspectives and ideas about me that, that weren't even really true, right? It was painful to 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 choose me at that time, which sounds kind of crazy, right? But it was really painful. And that led to the complete dissolution of my relationship at that time, which exposed a ton of abandonment wounding. And I have one story that I want to share with you that I remember really well. And that was, as this relationship came apart, I step into my new life in many ways, like physically, mentally, emotionally, energetically. Like I'm starting to step into this new path for myself, and I move into my new place. I'm coming home one night, and coming home, as a newly single woman after being in a relationship for years, being, in having someone there, even if what's available there isn't even that great. Coming home alone, like in those really early stages, for me, that was, I feel it in my chest, right? That was really, really hard. And this one night I come home and I'm walking up the stairs and I'm unlocking the door. And with every step that I'm taking towards the door, with every turn of the key, like every action and movement I make, my heart is starting to beat faster and faster and faster, and it starts beating out of my chest and I can barely breathe. And I walk through the door and I am having a full-on panic attack, like a full-on, full-blown panic attack. And what initiated it was like thoughts, right? Like these thoughts of, I'm going to be alone forever. I'm alone, I'm alone, I'm alone, I'm alone, which is like one of my primary fears in life, is to be just left all alone. And I remember in this moment, there was actually still some threads to that relationship that was still playing out, that was creating a lot of instability, and it was still activating a lot of survival energy in my body, and it was still creating a lot of instability in my life. And so this panic attack, I walk in and I literally just collapse on the floor, and I'm in the fetal position and I'm just holding myself, and I am trying to breathe and I am crying, and I'm just like, this is what I think most human beings would label as rock bottom. But to me, this was like a legitimate rebirth. This was like a legitimate rebirth, right? Like I'm literally in the fetal position. I'm at like this really low point. And at the same time, I am coming to this conclusion within myself, like with every like active beat of my chest, every breath that I'm taking, I am coming to this conclusion, right? And I just allowed that panic to move through my body. Somehow, I didn't have really any resources at the time other than to just breathe. But I was coming to this conclusion that it was time to choose me now, like fully choose me now. Like, and to just cut those cords and cut those tethers and not allow what I was allowing to happen in my life to happen anymore. Like these threads of toxicity that I was still allowing, these little pieces creating disruption and disturbance to my nervous system and to my peace and to my body, right? It was really destabilizing. And at that time, like at this precipice, at this threshold, that's exactly where I met myself. I met myself at this threshold, right? Right in the depths of that panic attack. And in that moment, I came to the conclusion that it's time to choose me fully. Like it's time to figure out who I am on my own again, right? No more giving away my power, no more playing into shitty experiences that were creating so much stress in my body and my nervous system, right? That was truly like these experiences were sending me into tailspins of anxiety and self-doubt and self-abandonment. Like this panic attack was like my body's way of being like, no more of this. You can't do this to yourself anymore. And I was allowing that. And in that moment, I chose myself. And I remember the next day, I was like, I messaged like a group of my girlfriends at the time. I'm like, we need a girls' trip, right? And this was like me stepping onto that path fully. Like, we need a girls' trip. I need some space. I need some perspective. And we planned a trip to Hawaii, right? And that there's a whole story to that. I actually, like, as soon as I made this decision to choose myself, I literally met my now husband. Like, it's crazy. So let me just get into the support that I had at this time in my life, right? So my community, right? I had a massive army of women at my back because at this time, I had grown my boot camp, my women's group, my women's holistic boot camp, Mind and Body Movement Newcastle. I had grown that to like 70 plus women. And I had this whole army of women at my back, right? And they were supporting me in every way, not necessarily because they knew the ins and outs of my personal life, but just having them, like every time, and anyone that was a part of that community would know, anytime you would walk into that space, like you would just rock up at boot camp, like everything, any issue, any problem in your life, it could just dissolve for that moment, just for that hour. Like we were a full on connected, just tight knit community, and we just had each other's backs, and it was so beautiful, and that held me so powerfully. My teachers and mentors, because I had them at this time, they helped me navigate so much, right? My teachers were able to help me when, my friends and my family just couldn't. They didn't get it. They couldn't understand why I was making these choices because they were so, like to them, they were extreme. To them, it was like, what the hell is going on, right? And so I had my teachers really holding the floor, really holding the vision for me as I chose this to play in my life on these levels in these new ways that were really important to me, right? And another part of that was like deeply, deeply supportive is that this is the time in my life where I'd started Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I love talking about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu because this is the number one tool in my toolbox that I have and had that I lean on when I need to feel strong and confident, right? So Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was something I started with my husband, who was just, my partner at the time. But what Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu taught me, firstly, it taught me about my shadows, right? And it activated my primal senses and defenses, right? It activated something so primordial in me, right? And then I competed as well. So I went and participated in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu competitions where it's just you and one other person, and you are literally fighting to the death in these matches, right? When like I remember my first competition as a white belt. This was just before I became a blue belt. I had 6 fights in one day, both gi and no gi. And when I won, and I won 4 of my 6 matches. When I won, it was one of the most powerful experiences of my life because every choice that I had made to get there was a choice I chose for myself, right? Pushing myself physically, mentally, and emotionally, right? To get to that point where I'm feeling so strong and so powerful within myself, right? This leaked into every area of my life, my business, my service, my personal life, right? My own inner strength, my own inner fire. And so Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was like one of my number one support tools, like resources for this time. And so the medicine in this time, again, as I said, this is a really big chunk of my journey. So there was a lot of medicine in this, but I'll share just a few things with you. The first thing is that out of all of this, I built the most incredible legacy, right? I started Mind and Body Movement Newcastle in the very first stages of my journey, right at the beginning. And I built this into a successful business and a thriving community, right? A holistic women's boot camp, blending the worlds of personal growth and holistic health and fitness. And I evolved this over many, many years into the most powerful, most beautiful, most connected community. It wasn't always perfect. It wasn't always right for everyone. But for those who it was right for, it was medicine, right? And I evolved this. I took this from being just an outdoor boot camp and I built an entire gym, right? I invested all of my money into building a gym and a sacred home for women where we do this deep work and we do this physical work. And I was guiding them into their bodies, back into their internal navigation systems, right? I was starting a workout by asking what day of their cycle they're on, right? And we're using dancing and laughing and all these different forms of embodiment as medicine to connect with each other and to feel amazing and to grow, right? I started my one-on-one mentoring programs. I started my signature Heal Her program, right? I became a woman of action at this time. And I was living and breathing, and still am, living and breathing that multifaceted, multi-dynamic, multi-passionate nature. I was living that, right? I started my first podcast, the Holistic PT podcast, right? This is very much the Holistic PT era for anyone who remembers. And I was sharing my stories and I was teaching them and I was offering support. And I had an amazing community of people who were really genuinely interested in what I had to say. And I also facilitated my first retreat during this time. So there's a lot of medicine, a lot of growth, a lot of transition, a lot of change in this time. And out of that, I built a genuine, beautiful legacy, right? And in that, I was also choosing myself, right? Hitting rock bottom and being reborn out of that place of literally meeting my tolerance for toxicity, my tolerance for self-abandonment, my tolerance for survival, like just being in survival all of the time, right? Choosing me in that moment, in that moment where I was on the floor, mid panic attack, like coming to this conclusion as that panic attack moved through and dissolved. This led me to meet my now husband, right? Which is so crazy. Like literally the next day, I was like, I'm choosing myself. We're going to Hawaii. I'm like getting the girls together, weeks and weeks and weeks of planning, choosing myself, opting out of, these toxic threads, like really cutting these ties. And I will quickly tell you this story because it's a beautiful story. And it's such a reflection of what's possible when you do listen and you do choose yourself. So I make this pact with my friends. We're going to Hawaii. We're gonna, I'm choosing myself. This era is all about me. It's all about me choosing me and opting out of all these toxic threads and experiences that I was allowing. And my housemate and I at the time, I was like, I need to go to the travel agent. I need to go to TravelX to pick up some US cash. I fly out to Hawaii the next day. So he's like, yeah, I'll come with you. And so we go to the shops and I'm looking everywhere for the TravelX. And then my housemate out of nowhere goes, oh, there's my mate. I was like, oh, okay, let's go say hello. Immediately, I was intrigued by this human. And my housemate at the time introduced me to him, and I'm like, he's running this amazing gym where he's working with disability kids and he's running mixed martial arts classes for kids with autism and disabilities. And he teaches kids how to do jiu-jitsu and wrestle. And like, we're like literally doing, really beautiful, both doing really beautiful work in the world. And we just connected instantly. And not only did we connect instantly, he was literally standing out the front of the TravelX. Like right where we needed to be at that exact time. And I just love that. I just think it's so beautiful, so powerful. And so, we meet, we connect, he leaves. I get my money from the TravelX and I turn to my housemate like, who is that? Is he single? Like, tell me right now, like hook me up straight away. Anyway, long story short, this guy ends up being my husband. So that is, to me, a really powerful reflection of what happens when you listen to your heart and you listen to what's alive in you and you follow those threads. And one final piece of medicine and gold from this particular time in my life is really moving from that black and white thinking to dualistic awareness or dual awareness, being able to hold two experiences at one time, three experiences at one time, two truths at once, right? Just taking all of my lessons, all of my challenges and turning them into wisdom and breakthroughs and being able to hold so much more. Like my perspective and on life, my ability to, think outside the box, like all of it had just grown exponentially. And that was huge because that was the groundwork, right? That increasing my mental capacity, increasing my perspective, loosening up the gears, like re-oiling that mental cognitive machine, rewiring the circuitry. That was, and I believe this to be true of all growth and healing paths, right? Is like that's the foundation. I was laying the foundation there. I was establishing some really beautiful, juicy roots, right? And it was the groundwork, right? And that led me to, this next phase, which we'll call the end, right? It's the end, but not really the end. But this was where I moved into another initiation cycle or season of my life, right? I've laid this groundwork. I've transitioned out of like this full-on phase and experience of my life and into this whole new one. And then, that transition period was, as I mentioned, like 5 years long or something like that. It was a long time. And that kind of reaches its own completion. And now, this final phase of my story, we'll call it the end. I, I'm 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 initiated again in my service, right? And through the deeper healing that was occurring at this time. Okay. It was also a huge transitionary period for me as well, because this was, when I decided to close down my gym and again follow that thrum, that thread, that knowing that it was time for me to leave this part of my journey behind and move into, mentorship and retreats and doing that beautiful one-on-one work and group work that just was lighting me up so much. And this is where, I start doing a lot of the deeper work, right? A lot of trauma healing, a lot of nervous system healing, and really peeling back these layers by layer, by layer, by layer. And this is what I just call like the deeper descent, right? From my head, right? Because everything up until this point, not everything, but majority up until this point was all sort of happening from the neck up with some awareness and some, experience happening from my body. But this end part is very much like the descent from head to heart, from heart to womb. Okay, and really touching the deeper layers that were now accessible to me, that I was able to enter as a result of all of the groundwork that I had laid through, many, many, many years of of growth and evolution. And so at this time, what it was like living in my body was that, I'm feeling mostly stable, mostly connected, a lot more relaxed. But there is still a lot of tension. There's still a lot of rigidity. There's still a lot of dissociation happening, right? Especially through my service. I'm going into these deeper levels and layers of myself, and that's initiating me on deeper levels and layers of my service. And that's requiring me to move into these new ways within my service and my business. And that felt really scary and really hard. And there was a lot of collapse and a lot of dissociation, a lot of freeze happening. And there's still a lot of tension in my body, in my hips, in my belly, in my womb. And that's all starting to come to the surface, right? Especially as I'm unwinding so much from within. At this time, my thinking was, it was a bit of everything. It was a bit of a mixed bag, if I'm honest, because I had perspective, I had the capacity to really shift my thinking and change the quality of my thinking, and I felt clear and expansive. But with these deeper layers, there was also a lot of doubt coming through, right? I actually spent a lot of time doubting myself through this period of my life, and internalizing and really processing and thinking a lot. And if anything, like over processing, over feeling, like attaching to the felt sense experience, like really like sitting in the process instead of allowing it to really like just come to its own completion. Not always, right? But that was the thread, that was the pattern. And there were just lots of really big turns in the spiral, like coming back around and using my head as I, descend more into my body, that desire to sort of like get out of my body, and lots of that happening, like these threads within me coming back around to be seen and met and explored and healed and come to completion, right? And so this was very much my healing era. This is very much that era of going deep into my body. This is where I'm working with my teachers around trauma. This is where I'm digging deep. And I don't mean digging for stuff. I just mean like digging in my heels and choosing the path of devotion to my inner world, to my body on this new level, right? Because the first part of my journey was very much the physical, right? Very much building that physical strength, and coming into contact with my physical vessel, right? Reclaiming my health, reclaiming my vitality, feeling strong in my body. This is very much around actually now this is about the energy. This is about spirit. This is about emotion. This is about really coming into the body and contacting sensation and tension and moving a lot of unmet, deeply held tension and survival stress in my body, moving that out, right? And really meeting with new parts of myself that were buried underneath the armor, underneath the protection, underneath the perfection, underneath the collapse and the dissociation, and really starting to come into relationship with more of all these different parts of me, like big homecoming, right? Big homecoming. And so the challenges that I was experiencing at this time was really massive transition, right? I let my gym go. This legacy that I'd built, that my whole identity was wrapped in, letting that go, right? And choosing this new path for myself that actually felt really, really scary. But the challenge, the biggest challenge out of all of it was actually letting go of that community, that experience of walking into my gym and having these amazing women at my back and sides, like at all times, right? Where you just kind of walk in and you feel safe, you feel connected, you feel supported, you feel loved, you feel like you can do anything, right? And that was seemingly gone overnight, right? That was a huge challenge for me. And it took me like quite some time to actually recognize that my lack of community was really impacting me mentally and emotionally, and just my overall joy in life, right? And then another challenge at this time was I was experiencing a lot of shame, right? Growing my business, staying in integrity, like losing my footing over and over and over again. Just as the personal development and the growth in the healing industry just kind of exploded, right? And just like I actually feel like for that period of time, I just really struggled to hold myself in my way, my uniqueness, my creativity, like my channel. Like I just really struggled with that. And then I really struggled with the shame of struggling with that. Right. So this was a massive challenge for me and a massive initiation, because it was really, I was allowing all these experiences to sort of chip away at my authenticity, at my creativity, at my excitement, at my gut. Yes, like all of these experiences that I've had up until this point, where I'm following this intuition, I'm following this feeling, like it was seemingly, I allowed it to, like this experience, like I allowed it to sort of be eroded, which eroded my trust within myself and how I show up in the world. And that was honestly a really hard time. Like I really struggled a lot with negative thinking, with fear of failure, I was really zooming in on things. So I really struggled to zoom out. And I was really focused on like what wasn't working rather than what was working and what was available to me. And so I kind of did this kind of 180, and I had a lot of shame around that, especially as someone who had done so much. You know what I mean? And it honestly took me a couple of years to like really move through that experience and come out the other side and gain the perspective that I needed to gain and the strength that I needed to gain to start recalibrating myself and reorienting myself back into my own experience, back into my own energy, back into my own authenticity, back into my own creativity. Right. So there was just a lot of initiation happening through my service, through being online, through the explosion and expansion of the healing and personal development industry. Right. It just completely lost my footing at times, and then experiencing a ton of shame around that. So that was really, really challenging. And then also becoming someone new that also feels the same, right? So I'd experienced so much growth, right? So much growth, right? So much capacity, right? And then having this kind of doubt within me I was experiencing a lot of friction within my service as I deepened. Okay, so I might reframe that. I felt like I was becoming someone new and I wasn't allowing that to take hold. Right? So as I deepened within myself, as I cultivated more depth, more capacity within me, I was becoming a different kind of mentor, a different kind of teacher. My service was shifting, it was deepening, right? And as my work deepened, it just took me a really long time to claim that depth and to really acknowledge and stabilize myself in this depth and capacity, and to bring this into my work fully with ownership, with authority, right? My eyes were just very much looking out for what seemed like a really long time, right? And it took me some time to reorient and turn those eyes back towards myself and my own experience. And then obviously having shame, which is such a gatekeeper for power, for like really owning your power, really owning where you're at. So these were the main challenges that I was experiencing at this time. And so I actually want to speak a little bit about the breakthroughs that I had at this time, right? It's the medicine and the gold as well, but these are some of the breakthroughs that I actually had that really shifted things for me, that really reoriented me back into my own experience. And that was, you know, I got to another place similar to when I was having that panic attack on the ground that I spoke about earlier. Like I got to this place where I had really met my own threshold for just how shit I was allowing my life to feel. The negative thinking, the doubt, the spiraling, the tailspin, the incessant questioning of whether what I'm doing is right or not. Right? Like I just met myself in this place where I was like, oh, I cannot do this anymore. Like I actually got so sick of myself. I met my threshold for my own toxicity, right? And what happened was I just got so fed up with my own bullshit, right? That it gave me the capacity to discern, right? Like I was able to break through to discernment. I really started to know the difference between what really is right for me and what isn't right for me, and really how to take a stand for that, right? And what supported me through this, like the tools and the resources that I was using at this time, was honestly, this is a phase of my life where I'm coming into a really deep connection and relationship with spirit, with the earth. And this was a very, very present source of guidance and support for me at this time. Right. This is also a time that I didn't have a teacher or a mentor through a lot of this. I chose not to, firstly, to see who I'd become without this, like without that guidance, without that support. And that felt really necessary at the time. But it also did get to a point where I was honestly super ready to have that support again, and really in need of it. But I just didn't have the resources to make that happen the way that I wanted it to happen. So, I turned to spirit, right? I turned to the earth, right? I turned to some really powerful books and new teachings and new, teachers of, these books. And I actually started my journey into the world and the realms of shamanism, of earth-based practices. And my journey really started to shift gears towards connection with all of life and the collective experience. And this is actually what started to revive me and support me in this time where I was spiraling and meeting my threshold of toxicity and just allowing myself to treat myself so poorly, and allowing the shame to win, allowing the shame to define me, allowing the shame to take action for me, right? It was this orientation to, or reorientation towards spirituality, and not in the way that you hear about it, right? This was a really personal, you wouldn't have heard me speak about any of this, right? Was just a very personal, and again, like just another hit inside that just knew, like I was finding these teachers in these books and these teachings just through what seemed like just out of nowhere, right? I was truly supported and being guided in these new ways, and that's what held me, really, really held me during this time when I didn't have the support that I wanted, right? In the way that I wanted it, right? Instead, these other ways just opened up for me. And I leant in, I grabbed that with both hands and with my whole heart. And so the medicine that sort of came out of this, this end point is I established the circle of life, which carries so much meaning to me. And my multifaceted, multi-passionate, multi-dynamic way of teaching and serving and being in the world, right? My capacity built in, like it just expanded in every single way, on every single level, to the point where, I could hold multiple experiences all at the same time, and the medicine in this was really, and this is what, brings me to my knees, is really just the deepening of my relationship with myself on every level, especially an emotional, energetic, and spiritual level. Right? Choosing to move through so much took so much courage. And I chose that. And you will always hear me champion and advocate humans who are choosing growth and healing and transformation, because it takes so much courage to hold a mirror up to yourself and look in it and face yourself fully, right? And to follow the path in which that reflection is leading you down, towards, to, on, right? And so the medicine in this was, if anything, like the primary medicine here for me, and the gold in this was really deepening my connection with myself on every level, not just a mental level, but my capacity to really know where my energy is at any time, and to know, on an emotional, a deep emotional level, what I'm feeling, how I'm feeling, and to really hold that experience, to not overprocess it, to not overthink it, but to become this vessel through which it moves. And that doesn't mean I don't hold on. That doesn't mean I get it perfect. It just means I know the difference, right? I know the difference. I can usually tell when I am holding on. Like, my capacity for my felt experience just exponentially evolved as a result of coming into such a deep connection and deep relationship with myself on these levels, right? And out of all of that, it led me to be this woman that's, right here in front of you today, who's able to just share her story imperfectly and messily, and, just in the way that it wants to come through, without, a full-on structure and written essay, right? It's like, this is just how it wants to move through me. And so I listen and I trust. And so that leads me to here, like with you right now, present day, July 2025, season 2 of the Circle Life podcast, right? And we'll call this just present day era, but currently where I'm at in my life right now is just what feels like a massive integration. It's just a massive integration. I feel like I'm just sitting atop so much, like everything that I've shared with you, which is like barely the tip of the iceberg, but it's like just sitting atop all of that, just sitting on top of it, like just a curious woman just sitting on top of a big mountain that is just her life experience, and she's just taking it all in, and she's gaining perspective, and she's just proud to have made it to where she is. And she's not fooling herself. She's not like, oh yeah, I've made it, I'm here, like it's done now, right? It's just like, just really soaking it in. Like that for me right now is my devotion, is my vision, is to really allow everything that I've been moving through to really move through, to truly integrate on the deepest levels. And I can honestly feel myself changing and shifting and growing in perspective and capacity every single day. Like every single day I'm experiencing what feels like more depth, more permission, more power, more choice, more perspective, like more willingness to take action, to choose discomfort, to face off with my resistance, right? To face off with my shame, right? My body feels, light and soft. It feels different. Like it feels soft even in the tension. I feel grounded and connected, and I feel deeply, deeply, deeply supported, deeply rooted in who I am and what I'm here to do, even if that looks different to what everyone else is doing, right? And I hope it does, right? Because it is not the same at all, right? But there are still things alive in me, there are still moments where I can feel my energy wanting to leave my body. I want to leave, the leaving pattern. Like I want to leave, I want to dissociate, I want to collapse. That's still alive in me, and that still initiates me a lot, especially through my service, especially as I start to feel into more of these really powerful, creative ways that I'm like that. This is what's being channeled in me to work with more of my, I have this really I have this affinity for punk music. Anyone who knows me well knows just how much I love like Blink-182 and The Used and Story of the Year and Taking Back Sunday. And I've got all these really beautiful creative ideas around how to use this, in my creativity, in my processes, in the work that I teach, in the way that I share that, in the way that I bring that through, right? So, yeah, I'm starting to feel, the tension of wanting to bring that through and simultaneously feeling more alive and more excited about, the woman that I'm becoming. And if I'm completely honest with you, like present day, I've never been more unsure about exactly where I'm going or exactly what I'm doing or how I'm doing it or how I'm going to do it. And I feel like that's it for me. Like that's it for me right now. That's the medicine. It's the not knowing. And this is actually where I thrive. And when I allow myself to really lean into that and trust that, right? No matter how I see it done, no matter how much everyone else has this, like, it seems like they just know what they're doing all of the time. Like the medicine is actually, for me, is in the not knowing, right? Because I never really know until I know. And then I just move. And when I do it that way, it always works. Like it always works. And I'm devoted to that right now. That's what I'm devoted to. I'm devoted to reframing how I can be of service. I'm devoted to reframing what can I do? How can I do it? What should I do? What's the best way to, how does my service want to move through me? How does my service need me to be today? Right? How do my gifts need me to show up today? How does spirit need me to show up today? How does the collective need me in my service today? Right? What does my devotion need from me? What is my devotion calling through me, from me right now? Right? And I'm just devoted to staying in contact and in connection with my own experience in every way. I'm devoted to referring safety to myself and love to myself and choosing my service and choosing the way that wants to come through, even if it makes me cringe, right? And so the narrative is really changing for me right now. As I said, like it's not about what am I here to do? It's more, how am I to be of service? What is this time asking of me? What is devotion asking of me? Right? And just being in relationship in my life, in with my service, with my creativity in a way that isn't so extractive, but it's more, I'm here to listen. I'm here to listen. Tell me, show me, and just really being devoted to hearing and seeing and listening and responding, right, to that. Like that is the process that I'm really deeply curious about right now and really interested in cultivating for myself. And so that's where I'm at, present day. Okay, well, thank you so much for hearing my story. If any of this landed with you, if anything resonated for you, if you saw yourself in my story, very much the same way I see myself when other women share their stories, it just gives me so much perspective, shines a light on the places within me in my life that I wouldn't otherwise be able to see. If I have somehow managed to do that for you in this episode today, I would just love to hear about it. I'd love to connect with you. You can do so in the comments below. You can find me on Instagram at Circle of Life with Ellen. Either way, I'm honored you're here and I'm so excited for where we're going. Thank you for tuning in, and I will see you in the next episode.